Welcome to the Softland Central podcast, your home for market entry knowledge and resources. Softland Central is brought to you by Softland Partners, an online marketplace to help you find best fit resources for your market entry. Find them at softlandpartners.com.
And I think that kind of leads to, I think one of the most common mistakes that we see with companies coming out of the UK and Europe going to the US is that I think some of them go too quickly, and some of them don't go quickly enough. And I'm going to sort of level set by saying, what I mean by that is when the company decides to formally launch U.S. operations, right? And typically, that's some combination of hiring local U.S. employees and potentially supplementing that with employees who they send over from HQ in the UK or Europe. And what I mean by going too quickly is, especially in the tech space, we come across a lot of companies who say, right, I gotta go to the US and launch in the US because I'm a tech company, therefore I need to go to the United States, right? And I do think that for companies who haven't yet built a US business before or haven't had experience in the US, there's sometimes, obviously not with all companies, but sometimes with some companies, there's this perception that the streets in the US are paved with VC gold. If it works in the UK or Europe, it must work in the US. All we need to do is get over there, and the millions and billions will be ours. But actually, having success in the UK or kind of the European market is no guarantee, and very often not even necessarily a predictor of success in the U.S. For any number of reasons, not the least of which is that the U.S. is not only is it a different let's say business and consumer market than the UK and Europe, but it's many different markets in what companies will and what individuals will buy in the Northeast is not necessarily the same as what they'll look for in the Southwest or the Northwest, right? And what we find is a much better predictor of success is when the company is pulled into the United States by customer traction and user growth, and then it follows that up by launching operations, as opposed to launching operations and then basically trying to figure out whether or not there was product market fit there. In other words, and let me sort of summarize that, is that generally speaking, you want to be pulled in by product market fit and then go scale from that, as opposed to going to the US and then trying to figure out whether you have product market fit in the first place, right? The latter approach is sort of fraught with risk in terms of wasting time and money and effort. So that's kind of what I mean about sort of going too quickly, right? But then there's another type of company, and we've seen this over the years, which I'm not sure that we would have seen this coming initially, is that there are some companies that do have that product market fit and launch in the States and begin to trade there and do business there, but ultimately don't move quickly enough and don't scale quickly enough and move aggressively enough to compete with American competitors, right? And I do think on average in the United States, especially among venture-backed companies, where on average the venture rounds tend to be a little bit larger than in Europe, there's this sense of scale quickly, spend money aggressively if you have to, even if you're a loss-making business, in order to capture market share, right? In other words, as I think that we've seen over time, on average, American companies will aggressively spend if there is ROI. And I think that is not necessarily always the case in Europe. I think especially because there's a little bit more historically, at least, it's changing significantly, but historically there's been a little bit more of a focus, and I think in the investment community on hitting profitability or hitting break even a little at an earlier stage in the company's life cycle, relative to, let's say, on average, the investment community in the US. And that leads to I think an approach to company building that focuses a little bit more on on hitting profitability, right? Not necessarily spending based on ROI, but spending based on how close are you to profitability. And if you're going in competing with American companies that are spending aggressively, one of the things that we've seen is that some companies coming out of the UK or Europe can get overtaken by American companies that are moving quickly and a little bit more aggressively.